author Sarah A. Chrisman.
And I'm Gabriel Chrisman.
And today we're going to be discussing Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey and Maturin series, also known as the Master and Commander series. So, the Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey and Maturin series is rather long.
Yes, now this is the compact edition, we should make it clear.
Well, we should explain what that means, because it's not abridged. This
Right.
is the full series.
Right.
Even though, if you get the paperback version, the full series takes up a whole library shelf.
It's
like
20
wall-to-wall.
substantial novels.
It's 20 novels.
Plus one unfinished novel.
Right, and they're all in here. They're all in here.
They're just printed on Bible-thin paper in very tiny print.
Right, right. So they're compressed, but they're not abridged.
Correct, yes.
So-
It is the compact edition.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
extremely thin paper, pretty small print,
Very-
small margins.
Very tiny.
Right.
Very tiny.
So,
But anyhow, yeah, it is the full series. And
but we should explain to people what these are.
we should explain to people what these are. Do you want to take over on that?
So Patrick O'Brien is one of the only novelists that New York Times Book Review has in fact identified as being the best historical novelist of all time.
That's a distinction.
That is a distinction. These 20 books, he wrote over the course of 30-something years, and they are an incredible series that is really one continuous novel,
Right.
following the same characters through the Napoleonic Wars.
Right. And a lot of series, if they go on for a while, they start to get really repetitive, where it's like, okay, character A did this again, and character B reacted this way again.
Right.
These somehow avoid that,
They
despite
don't,
being so long.
right. They don't have sort of a stock storyline that just gets
Right.
repeated and repeated,
Right.
the way a lot of genre fiction does.
They're all completely different stories, even though I'm looking up how many pages. So there are, in the full set, 6,498 pages.
And it is an incredible continuous flow. These are not ones that have sort of a lot of starting and stopping. They just keep on going.
They keep on going. And I would like to point out that Gabriel read these aloud to me twice.
So far.
The full series.
There will be more.
Yes, he's read the full series to me twice. So 6,400 6,498 pages twice.
Yes.
Yes.
They make wonderful read-alouds because Patrick O'Brien is amazing at doing his own version of the Royal Navy language from the early 19th century. And
absolutely.
it is unique in any literature that I've ever encountered. A lot of it because I don't know anything about a lot of the details of sailing, especially in large, complicated men-of-war ships. A lot of it is fairly opaque, but that is okay. You just sort of let it happen.
You let the words roll over you.
Yes.
And I think if someone did try to digitize this and have lots of hyperlinks, it would totally spoil it.
To try to explain what's happening and try to explain
because
the details.
you'd be getting distracted the whole time, and it would be horrible.
Honestly, I approach this sort of like the way I approach reading Ulysses by James Joyce. That it's an impressionistic work. It's about the feelings that the language generates. And so this language generates amazing feelings. Even if you can't understand the details of every single word and every single nautical term, it doesn't matter.
Well, we also have the dictionary that somebody compiled to go with this.
A sea of words.
Yeah, sailing in a sea of words. That's what they
Yes.
called the dictionary that goes with this.
And that is kind of the feeling
It
that
is
you
the
get
feeling.
from this. Yeah.
Right.
And his characters are so well drawn.
Oh, yeah, they're wonderful. Let's talk about his characters.
Yes.
So, there's two main characters, Aubrey and Jack Aubrey and Maturin, Stephen Maturin.
Yes.
And Captain Jack Aubrey
Yes.
and Dr. Stephen Maturin.
Well, of course, he doesn't start as a captain.
But he starts as a master and commander,
That is
who
correct.
is, by courtesy, a captain.
Correct, yes. But it is, again, it's wonderful just the way that he does the relationship between these two characters, and it's an evolving relationship over the course of 20 and a bit books.
Right.
And they are, again, it's hard to find in literature such really good friends represented.
This is the best
With
friendship
all the
in
details,
literature.
yeah, with all the
Yeah.
details of that friendship.
And I say that even being a huge fan of Ellen Montgomery's Anne of Green Gables books and knowing all about Anne and Diana,
Right.
and there are lots of other good friendships in literature. This is
The
definitely maybe the best. Maybe the
I would
best.
give it the best.
It's definitely up there.
Yes.
It's definitely up there. It is an awesome friendship. And I love the relationship of these two men. And as they, it's interesting seeing that relationship grow and evolve as they get older. They are both very straight. Very straight. You get to meet their wives and see them court these women and all of the challenges they have. Jack marries the classic very sweet woman, and Stephen marries a rather wild woman. But they're very straight men, but they have just this incredibly close relationship.
Yes.
And I find that just really intriguing and really fun to watch that grow. And
It's
watch
also
that
fun
develop.
given how different they are in terms of everything. Character, experience, background, interests, the whole deal. But they have this friendship that they share despite all those barriers.
Well, they're the classic complement.
Yes.
Because Jack is the very active,
Open, sort of bluff. He's, sure, he does a certain amount of nautical deception, but it's nothing compared to Stephen's sort of spy-like.
Yeah, Stephen is actually a spy.
Correct.
He is actually a spy. Besides being a doctor, he is a spy for the British Empire.
He works for the intelligence services.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting because Jack is John Bull.
Basically,
Jack is the
yes.
quintessential Englishman. Stephen is Catalan.
Yes.
So he's Spanish.
And Irish.
Spanish and Irish,
Yes.
yes. His father is Spanish, Catalan,
Yes.
specifically.
Yes.
And his mother was Irish. And he hates Napoleon. And so he agrees to be because he's Catalan and he speaks all these different languages, he agrees to be a spy for the British Empire. And he is always into these intrigues and these very complicated things.
Very complicated, diplomatic and political, and even several levels deep beneath the surface of politics.
Right. So Stephen is all about the brains and Jack is all about the brawn.
Well, Jack's nautical tactics are without peer.
He's good at tactics. He's
Yes.
very good at tactics.
Yep.
There's a reason why, though, Jack is getting progressively beat up throughout these books, and
Yes.
Stephen has one bad torture incident, and otherwise he falls down a lot. He falls down a lot.
And occasionally he gets marooned or any number of other things.
He occasionally gets marooned.
Yes.
Yeah, but even the ways they get injured are very different.
Yes, this is very true. But it is an incredible series to read. And I do recommend, you could pick this up anywhere. It is far better if you read it from the first book straight through.
Yeah.
They're not just repeating storylines where you could pick it up anywhere. They are a continual development and a continuous novel. I don't even really think of them as separate books.
No, and in fact, the second time you were reading it through to me, we were having trouble remembering what happened in which book.
Right.
Because it is such a continual story that you kind of overlook where one stops and another starts.
Right.
So it's really hard for me to pick out what's the best book of this series because to me it's all one story.
Right. It's like there are albums where you can listen to individual songs and it doesn't matter. They're just individual songs. And there are albums where you have to listen to the whole album and it's hard to tell even where songs start and stop.
Right, exactly.
And this is one of those.
And those are what I would consider opera albums.
Concept albums would be
Concept
the
albums.
rock version.
Okay. Okay, this is a concept album of the series, let's put it that way. Yes, well, and we didn't mention that the other thing that characterizes Stephen, he's a spy, but he's also a naturalist.
And a doctor.
And a doctor.
And a scientist, yes.
And
so it's
scientist.
everything, all rolled into one.
Yeah.
Yes, he is the polymath. And again, the sort of late 18th century polymath that you just don't encounter anymore. Now it's all about narrow specialties, and he is, you know, a sort of a scientist of all sorts, all rolled into one. Plus a doctor, plus a spy.
Right.
That's basically your ultimate character for the late 18th century, I think.
Right. So he's the one who's running around trying to convince the men, don't shoot the albatrosses, please.
Right.
Even at the same time, he's dissecting so many animals. At one point, he burns down one of their ships because all the animals are preserved in alcohol.
Yes.
Well, technically, he doesn't burn down the ship. His assistant burns down the ship. But either way, he's dissecting a lot of animals.
Yes. But it is, to me, the most obvious sort of aspect of this, besides all the characters, besides all the friendship and the details of all of that, is simply the language. And there are writers who have a command of language that is just different from every other writer, and very distinctive.
Right. Let's take a minute before we wrap up. Let's take a minute to talk about the women in the story.
Sure.
So the two wives.
Yes.
So there's Sophie and then there's Diana. Sophie is Jack's wife, Diana is Stephen's wife. And they're very different. I mean, even in terms of Sophie is a blonde and Diana is the quintessential ravishing brunette. And Sophie is the homebody and Diana is the extrovert who at one point becomes the mistress of an American, I think it is. They're in America, but is he an American? I don't remember.
Yeah, he's an American.
He's an American. Can't trust those Americans.
Of course not.
And then Sophie is the one who's staying at home with the children, and Diana is the one who is. She winds up with this big Herkin diamond that becomes a plot device. And why do you suppose Patrick O'Brian chose to set up Jack with the homebody wife and Stephen with the always a different adventure around every corner wife?
Couple reasons. One of them was that I think he was a lot of the main naval figure people associate with the Napoleonic Wars is Nelson.
True.
Nelson famously had a wife that was much more similar to Diana.
His mistress was more similar to Diana. His wife was more similar to Sophie.
Right.
I always felt sorry for Nelson's real wife.
Right, but that's because it's basically, I think that's why he picked Sophie for Jack, is to play against the Nelson stereotype.
That makes sense. And also, if you read Patrick O'Brien's biography, his own relationship with his wife was closer to the Stephen-Diana relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that he sort of was holding up the ideal there.
Yeah.
He also wanted to pick someone that Jack, as the quintessential Englishman, would have picked.
True. And Stephen as the sneaky spy.
Right. But Stephen also as someone who was not handsome and did not...
But he marries a knockout. In fact,
Correct.
there's that scene at the opera where somebody spots Diana and says, she's married to that?
Yes, exactly. But that is, to my mind, again, part of the reason why he would go for someone like that.
True.
And you notice that he didn't get her easily. He had a long, drawn-out campaign.
True, and she goes for him because he's less work than all of the crazy guys she's gotten mixed up it with.
And because he'll do anything for her.
He'll do anything for her.
Right.
Yes.
And so, but it's also just a very difficult relationship compared to Jack and Sophie.
Yeah, Jack and Sophie have, for the most part, a very comfortable relationship.
It's mostly uncomplicated except for Jack's occasional dalliances.
Of which he has many.
Occasionally.
You have to admit.
Okay, fine. A few.
Jack ashore.
Correct.
Okay, but back to the sweep.
I recommend this series to absolutely anyone who has any interest in reading historical fiction whatsoever. I don't care if you don't know anything about the Navy. I don't care if you don't know anything about the Napoleonic War era.
I don't care if you've never seen an ocean. You will still like these books.
Yes, you absolutely will. And again, just let that language just sort of flow over you and everything. If you don't know the details about the cross-cat harpins or something like that,
or hawser laid versus cable laid,
which still isn't clear to me. Yes, you'll get that one when you read with the section where he has to, specify the designs on a set of silver.
Yes, well, Jack has sent Stephen out to buy a set of silver for him, and when Stephen comes back with the silver, it's the right rope but tied the wrong way.
Right,
that's
yes.
on the silver, and Jack gets upset.
Yes.
Says, how could you have been on ships all these years and not have come over have digested this distinction yet?
Right. Yes. But absolutely, I do recommend this series to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely everyone, and I can't recommend them heartily enough.
Right.
The other part that I do love about them, and I have to say, is that getting towards the end of this series, it was unthinkable to work out how things would be wrapped up.
Well, he didn't.
Right, and that is the best part, is that he died while writing the last novel that exists, the 21st novel. It isn't even titled. And what the publisher decided to do was release that 21st novel exactly as he had written it as a draft, stopping in the middle of a sentence just where he stopped.
Yeah, he died in harness. He died writing the last book.
And they even published that last book so that the last few pages of his handwritten manuscript are part of the publication, so that you can see exactly how it ended, such as it was. But the fact is, it doesn't end. The whole point for me is that this whole series just has this wonderful sweep, and then the lack of ending just means that it feels like it could just go on forever.
Right.
And that is just the best feeling. It is so much better than if he had tried to wrap it up. Mm-hmm. And I think he realized there was no way to wrap it up, and that was the best and only way, that it could have possibly stop.
Right. And there are some books that make good silent reading and some books that make good read aloud, and they don't always cross over. These do. These are both. And they're excellent read alouds.
Yes.
Besides being good silent reading, they're excellent read alouds.
As long as you can find someone who won't trip over all the nautical terms.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you gotta find someone you sync with.
Yes.
Thank you for watching today. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up. And remember to tell your friends about my books. Happy reading.